Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Kurt Ewald. Um, I guess I'll tell a little bit about my story. I'll start off when I came to know Christ. I was 12 years old whenever I'm from Texas. How many people from here from Texas? Okay, there's a few of y'all. I was from a small town called Dilley, Texas. And when I was 12, we moved to another town called Sweeney. And during that time, I went through some teenage stuff and just kind of isolated myself. I was shy and so forth. So I uh, went through a time where deep depression set in, suicidal thoughts set in. My parents didn't understand what was going on and stuff. I just kind of kept it all to myself. And it was during my right after eighth grade. I was my mom knew something was up, so this church that we had been going to and stuff, she made me go to youth camp. And at youth camp, of course I told her no, I'm not going to go, and she obviously she won. But so I went to youth camp. I was at Baylor University. We were going to a Baptist church at that time, and I heard the gospel. It was the week of my 15th birthday, and in June of 1987. And so she, or the minister who was giving the message and heard the gospel of Christ. And even though I had been raised, in Sunday school and stuff, heard the stories, and nothing ever clicked to my spirit. And it wasn't until that summer, whenever I was at my lowest, when I had thought about taking my own life, and at the age of 14, just ending the suffering and stuff that I had been experiencing, and heard the gospel in a fresh new way, where Jesus wanted to be your best friend. And I just prayed, and immediately I was delivered from the deep depression, the suicidal thoughts, and then just experienced a deep love and joy that I had never encountered before. And it was about 14 months after that, we were about to start my at that time 10th grade year in high school, and we went to a Sunday school teacher's class to have a prayer meeting, to pray that God would help us to be witnesses that year at school, to not to be ashamed of the gospel of Christ. And I ended up whenever I was driving home after the prayer meeting, I ended up just listening to back then when we had cassettes. For those of you who are too young, y'all may not know what those are, but had a cassette of praise and worship music that my mom used to listen to, and so I put that into the cassette player while I was driving back out to the house, and I was just praising Jesus. I said, Jesus, I love you so much. You are so awesome. You are so beautiful, and thank you for being my friend. Thank you for loving me despite my failures. And as I was praising him and stuff, I experienced something supernatural to me at the time, because I was raised Baptist, didn't know anything about what I was experiencing. But I felt something began in the belly, in the center of my being, and it just kind of rose up. And once it reached my vocal cords, as I was praising him in English, there were a few words of an unknown language that came out of my mouth. And again, I had no idea what that was. And it wouldn't be for 7 years before I learned about or understood what that was. Even though obviously reading the New Testament and stuff, you come across speaking in tongues, but again, I just didn't put two and two together. But until 7 years later, but yeah, it was just God moving, and it ushered me into a deeper, more intimate relationship with Jesus. Sometimes the Holy Spirit would wake me up at 5 in the morning. At that time, I was 16, 16 years of age, and just going by what the Holy Spirit would just lead me to do, just a deeper, more intimate relationship with Jesus. So I'd get out of the bed, kneel by the bedside, turn my lamp on, and just read for about 30 minutes and pray to him. and then get back into bed and wait until it was time to get up to get ready for school. And there was more of a boldness, even though I wasn't a verbal person. I started making these little cheesy little things with construction paper, and Jesus is the only way to heaven. And I would put it on my locker. And before long, I had a couple of other Christians that would come up and ask, "Can you make something like that for me as well to put on my locker?" And in that sense, that's just how God used me in my 10th grade year. And so I'm going to forward real quick to when I learned the truth about, for me, before I learned about flat earth or about biblical cosmology. During the summer of 2010, I had come across a video called 9/11 Ripple Effect via YouTube. And I was just shocked that there was a third building. I had no idea there was a third building that had collapsed. And I saw the footage of it, saw the BBC report that had released it, 20 minutes beforehand. And I was just taken, it was like someone hits you in the stomach and just knocked the air out of you. I had voted for George W., being raised with a Republican standpoint on things. And it was, here we are. So I'm going to skip to this. So in 2010, I was working as a massage therapist at Massage Heights in Houston. I had an elderly gentleman in his late 80s who I'd known for about a year. All of a sudden, he asked in 2010, shortly after I had learned the truth about 9/11, he said, "Is there any way that you would consider being a driver for me part-time?" And so a couple of months later, I went ahead and told him, I said, "You know what? I think I'm ready to give that a try to change careers." Otherwise, I never would have gotten into the senior caregiving type of career. And so it was, it was shortly after that I began work. I put in my 2-week notice at the massage place and began working for Mr. Cook, and was with him for 2.5 years before he passed. But whenever I began working for him in 2010, it would be 4 years later that I would be working for former President Bush. I happened to be working for a lady for her father, taking care of her father, Mr. Horlock. And I knew she had worked part-time at the Bush office in Houston. And she sent a text. She said, "Kurt, would you be interested in working for President Bush when they come back from Kennebunkport, Maine, in October 2014? And I said, "Sure, let me give that a try. I'll put in my stuff." I thought, surely if this is of God, because I was connected to InfoWars with Crazy Alex Jones and architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. So, yeah. And so I thought and also Fritz Springmeier with Bloodlines of the Illuminati, whom I had already met a couple times in person. So here I was connected on Facebook to these people, and I thought, okay, well, God, if this is of you, then it's gonna fall together. It's gonna come together. And sure enough, it was an open door that God had opened. And so I had began working with President Bush from October 2014 up till the day he died. I was with him earlier that day before he passed. But I started learning about biblical cosmology in December of 2015 while I was working with President Bush. No, I never did ask, because if you ask someone who you're not going to get the truth from, why ask them? So I thought, I'm not even going to ask, but about biblical cosmology or the flat Earth. But anyway, that's pretty much it. Other than, I think that's it.